thought that it might be time for all of us to sit around one table together to talk face to face, to see how we can help shape the future to make it better for all of our residents. And I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, especially for having your mayor's leadership conference with our students from Kearns and Seminole High School. That's really helping the next generation, and after meeting with them and seeing all the great experiences you gave them, the future is bright in the city of Stanford, and I want to thank you for that personally.
Thanks for saying that. They're good kids, and I think we've got a good batch coming in for next year. So they were actually met at the meeting today, I think, for the first official meeting to do bylaws.
Oh, fun.
I'm going to miss that.
Did you arrange that purposely?
Bring the pain early.
Right.
Each group does their own bylaws.
Well, it's one set of bylaws, but we want each group to modify based upon what the former ones write and say, hey, we need changes, or you should look at this. So they're going to modify them a little bit.
Well, I think most of us know everyone around the table, but just in case we don't, Mr. Kelly, why don't you start to introduce yourself, share your role, and then we'll get right into the agenda.
I'm Bill Keller, Chief Financial Officer. Good to see Ms. Bjork, Mr. Van Harden.
Joe Rinaldi, Executive Director of Operations.
Dee Dee Shafter, School Board Member. Welcome.
Karen Allman, School Board Member.
Amy Lockhart, School Board Member.
Tina Kelmer, School Board Member.
Walt Griffin, Superintendent.
I'm Jeff Triplett, the mayor.
Patty Mason, Commissioner.
Randy Jones, City Executive.
Well, welcome. We appreciate the time you're taking out of your busy schedules to be here today. Our first item on the agenda is our Mellonville property discussion. Dr. Griffin, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Kellerman. I appreciate everybody getting together. And as everybody knows, I think about 2 years ago, we signed a lease for the Mellonville property. I think it was a 7-year lease. And since that time, we've been having a lot of informal discussion about potentially doing something different with that property in terms of an extended lease agreement or a purchase or a swap or whatever. And our board members, thank goodness, really stick to the sunshine. And so I've had many conversations on my little checklist with the board members about the Mellonville property, but I think it was just time for us to get together and have a discussion out in the sunshine. I think we all want to do the right thing, but I wanted to really hear what the city was thinking about the property, just give the board some ideas, and just give us some time to digest really what you're thinking about, and give them some time to think and discuss together, because they have not had that opportunity yet. Ms. Martin?
Thank you. Again, I want to thank the school district for the wonderful cooperative support, and certainly to the president and for the superintendent. A lot of this credit goes back to Mayor Triplett. Mayor Triplett had the idea, the dream of utilizing some vacant property for recreational purposes. He even got with one of the engineering firms that we use, EPH, to come up with this broad sketch and the concept of what could go there in terms of open fields, recognizing that that was a need within the community. And then we were able to work out with the district a 7-year lease where we would have the opportunity to manage what's happening in the property. The challenge came, however, when we were looking at building something and really investing money, we weren't able to go out to private companies, private businesses, private individuals to say, we'd like to build on this, but in 4 years, 5 years, it could revert back to the school district. So we really needed some long-term stability to say to somebody, the city either owns it or there's a real long-term lease that the city has, so that it was worth investing a sizable amount of money to develop the field, to put in the equipment, to put it, making it look the way it did. And therefore, that's when we had some conversations in terms of what could we do together. There was some land that the city had, that the school district was using a little by the pool, and we said, well, maybe why don't we just leave that over to the city, to the school district, and the city then get something in return. We looked at a number of opportunities, and we had individual conversations, but the idea of having a joint sit-down meeting to really present to the school district what plans we would like to see here, and then see how we can get. So with it, I'd like to turn it over to the mayor for any comments that you'd like to have, and we have a PowerPoint presentation prepared by Mr. Floyd.
I made a list of 5 items, and you said every one of them.
You're clairvoyant.
Meeting adjourned.
No, I think that's a good introduction for us to go ahead and go through, kind of the vision and the plan and what we kind of see as that whole complex corner coming together. So.
I'm going to say it to your mom, but Mary's comments accurate. I mean, everything that Ms. Calhoun said in the introduction is partnerships and things. That's what the theme is going to be, I think, here. Dr. Griffith, we've had numerous conversations about the Mellonville site, and I think from the lease agreement and our conversation, we have a mutual vision for that site. Our difficulty's been how to make that happen, how to assign a value to the various properties. So it was all said in the introductions. That's what we're here to talk about. It really is the future of the Mellonville site. And I'd like to, if you don't mind, just go through a couple of slides to give you the history of the site, because a couple of reoccurring themes will stand out, I think. Number one is it doesn't matter who has owned these properties, whether the school board owned the site next to the Third-Day Pool for a while. Now the city owned it. The city owned the Mellonville site for many years, and now the school board owns it. Didn't matter who owned it. It's always been used for a public purpose and to benefit the public. The other thing that stands out, and I think you'll see through all this, is the collaboration and cooperation. We put together numerous projects, starting with the stadium back in the early 1900s or 1970s, and that's continued. And that's what we're looking forward to in this discussion is we're going to share our vision with the school board, we'd like to know what your vision is, what your plans are, and how we work together, collaborate to make those things happen. I think everyone knows what the site is. It is the corner of Mellonville Avenue and Celery. It's a multi-family residential. The future land use is public, semi-public. It's been used for numerous years around this kind of thing for various recreational and school-type activities or functions. I mentioned the entire site, even though the Navy used the site for on and off for some years in the 40s and 50s, the entire site was owned by the city up until 1963. And that's the stadium and the entire 18 acres next to it. In the early 1900s, it was called Pace Acres, and it was used for it had a wooden stadium in 1921. It was used for area baseball. Sanford and Orlando were rivals with each other and played 2 times a week there. In 1951, the city replaced the wooden stadium with a new stadium to honor those that served the country. In 2001, the stadium was refurbished at cost $2 million, and that's the state of today. Is that better? Sorry. Over the years, the New York Giants have trained there, the Atlanta Braves, Boston Braves, many major league stars have played there. Babe Ruth, Jackie Robinson, Willie Mays, our own Tim Raines, and David Epstein. In 1963, the city sold the adjacent, let's see if this is going to work for us, the adjacent 18 acres to the company called the McFadden Corporation. This is after the Navy had left, and McFadden had agreed to setting up a naval training academy. So it was sold to McFadden in 1963 for $100,000. There was some concern, I think, of the school board having access to the stadium, while the city kept ownership of the stadium. So in 1971, the city and the school board entered into a 40-year agreement for use of the stadium by the school board for $1 a year. I think that's one of the earlier examples of collaboration and cooperation, and that was for $1 a year for the school board to use for their team sports and those type of things. In 1968, McFadden went bankrupt. And I'm not sure of the reason, but I have a document that there was a bankruptcy judge ordered a private sale, and the adjacent 18 acres was sold to the school board for $1. Over the years, and this is the old neighborhood, I'm sorry, this is the old, back it up. Well, sorry.
There you go, Tom.
Thank you. This is the old Naval Training Academy that McFadden built. This eventually became the school board administration transportation offices. Over here, where the pool is where the surplus property buildings were eventually built. And we believe right here where the tennis courts were, at some point in time became, I think 1986, became the metal building. So this site was eventually transferred over to school board use. As I said, the metal building was built in 1986. It's 30 years old. At some point in time, the A-10 10 program was established in the middle building. Head Start was added to the site at some point in time. And around this site through the years, the school board built Hamilton Elementary, Hopper Center, and the city built the Chase Ball Field. The city has desired to own the property for many years. In 2011, the city applied for a Florida Communities Trust grant. We had obtained a willing owner statement from the school board, and we were ranked very high on that grant award. We would have received $256,000 in order to go towards a purchase of the property. However, that year the state did not fund that particular grant. So we applied again in 2014 for a land and water conservation grant. Again, we had a willing owner statement from the school board about selling the property, and we did receive that grant. It was a 50-50 matching grant. The city would get $200,000, put $200,000 in. The grant, the stated purpose of the grant was to enable the city to increase the recreational open space, to improve the area environment by connecting parks and constructing multi-purpose facility for the area, which would include trails, trailhead, pavilions, playgrounds, and natural open space. The second grant continued that theme in 2014, and the stated purpose was for the conservation and recreation areas. And there was some discussion of eventually having recreation house there and becoming an East Side community center. We had this grant for 2 years. We discussed many times with the school district about purchasing the property, and we were unable to come to an agreement, and we lost this grant in March of this year. We no longer have that grant. We did, as Dr. Griffin mentioned, in 2014 enter a lease agreement with the school board for 7 years. It expires in 2021. It has a renewal option. The stated purpose of that lease agreement is to aid and cultivate community activities and services for the city of Sanford. It is for the exclusive use and occupancy by the city. And the school board, in the agreement, may not sell the lease property prior to termination date of 2021. The current use of that property, this is what we're using the building for now, is for still programs. Preston U, School of the Arts, is in their second year of using that property. Expressly U serves minority and underserved youth, over 100 middle and high schoolers in low and moderate income households. We also renewed an agreement with No Limit Health and Education. This is the youth organization headed by Pernell Bush. We provide services to youth promoting employment, community engagement, health and wellness, and mentoring. And in partnership with the Seminole State College, the program educates students in the basics of business and entrepreneurship. They also, in partnership with the County Health Department, have a Unity Day program in Floodlawn every year that attracts 500 to 600 students and promotes education, unity, pride, and collaboration. We also, this year, intend to have My Brother's Keepers initiative in this building. It's a local program that works to reduce disparities related to young African Americans and Hispanic males within the Seminole County high school cluster, and primarily middle and high school students. This is a consortium of many agencies and associations. And just recently, we signed an agreement with the Seminole Health Department for them to stage their mobile unit screening unit at that site 2 times a month to provide some local screening services for the community. I mentioned discussions when we had the grant monies for our community grant. We had many discussions with the school district, and after some discussions, to initiate some discussions about value, we actually submitted a proposal to the school district. Our difficulty was trying to figure out a value for the Seminole site, because the previous appraisal had listed the highest and best use as multifamily residential. It's just not going to happen. That area has an abundance of vacant properties. Celery Key and Celery Lakes has some of the highest vacancies and foreclosures in all of Central Florida. And there's just not a market for that type of business right now. And even the appraisal concluded that probably would not be financially feasible for 10 to 15 years. And the conclusion was that even though that was the highest and best use, was multifamily, probably the best financial use for that property right now would be to partner with the surrounding governmental use for recreational purposes. I will say our suggested method, we didn't view this as a broker real estate transaction. We really suggested we do a property exchange, which is allowed by Florida statute. And it would be an exchange of property between two public entities that serve a public purpose and benefits both parties in the community. And it's allowed by Florida statute. I think the language says that the school board by resolution has to first determine that the property is not necessary for educational purposes. And also that the language is that they take diligent measures to dispose of the educational property only in the best interest of the public. This is, by the way, this is our 2-acre site next to the Larrydale Aquatic Center. I think it's been used and probably currently used as a practice field for the football team. This is the site, the current Melville site. I think as you can see, it's vastly underused and dated from almost 5 years now.
How large is that site, Tom? The current?
Joe, help me, I think it's about 8.5 acres, but I'm not sure if that includes the surplus buildings.
It's about 8.5 acres, and it's about 8.5 acres inclusive of even the surplus buildings that we have there.
Right. And there's been some discussion back and forth about the surplus buildings. Oops, I'm sorry. They're right over this area. I think that they are probably in their lifespan, and don't know if we can use it, or I think Joe indicated they probably can come down. Although it's a metal skin, it's a wooden frame building, and I don't know the year, but I think that the frame, the structural integrity of the building is pretty well gone. So we think this is a diamond rough. Again, if you look at the surrounding areas, we have Hamilton Elementary up on this side of it. We have the stadium, $2 million stadium refurbished. We have Hopper Center over on this area. And we have Chase Field. We think when you look at the surrounding environment, the most logical and most compatible use for that area is a recreational open space, community services, that type of thing. And that's what our vision is to build something of that nature. In 2012, I believe, we had some conceptual plans done. And this was our initial vision for that area. And it involves multi-purpose fields. And here it involves an exercise health track, picnic pavilions, possibly the beginning of a community center, and mostly an open space recreational area. We'd also like to expand the services we currently offer in the A10 building to provide more youth and even senior services, such as we do at the west side. And eventually, we'd like to see it become the east side recreational sports complex. And we're talking about, that's our vision, is to have this as a recreational and community services facility. And again, to go back to what we're talking about, two entities whose sole purpose is to serve the public. And if you look back to history, we've cooperated in numerous projects over and over again. We cooperated with the stadium, we cooperated with Larrydale Aquatic Center, we cooperated with the school board for the 6 quarters of the West Side Community Center. Ms. Schaffner was front and center during that whole thing, working with CPH, working with Wharton Smith, working with Commissioner Williams, working with the school board to make that happen. I'm not sure that expansion would have happened, but it's been one of the best things that we've ever done. It provides services for young people, mentoring programs, after-school programs. There are numerous senior activities that happen there, and in between, they have basketball leagues for teenage and things. It's been one of the best things we've done, and it's a great partnership. That's kind of what we're looking forward with this site, is to talk about what the vision is of the school board. I think we have a mutual vision or purpose for this site, and then what we need to do to get there. We'd like to, before we leave today, maybe have an understanding of what our vision is, and maybe have an action plan and a timeline for how we get to that point. So with that, I'll answer any questions you may have, and looking forward to the discussion about the important use of the property.
Thank you, Mr. George. Ms. Song.
I have questions. Tom,
Tom, you talked about how much the school board invested in the property when they bought it, which was very minimal, $10, did you say?
It was a private sale, I don't understand that, I couldn't believe the document, but I think the school board later, there is something about some investment, I don't know if it's to pay off the McFadden debts or liens or whatever.
Okay.
The private sale in 71, I think, or 76, is for $1.
Is there a way to confirm that so we can get to?
The clerk of the courts actually has that sale on microfiche, and I got that and gave it to Steve Jordan, I believe, a couple of years ago. I don't have it in my records anymore.
I may have the document itself, but
I have a follow-up question to that. Do you know what the value of the property was when we took it, when we bought it?
I do not. I know we sold it, some property prior to that, 100,000 McFadden, I don't know what it was worth at that time.
Ms. Selker, do you remember maybe what those documents said?
My recollection is it was somewhere in the $170,000 range that we paid for that property. Again, this was a couple of years ago when we first started these conversations that I did all of that research and then turned it over to staff, so don't hold me to that number.
Okay. Mr. Rinaldi, I know it was before you were here, but in any of your records?
No, I haven't really followed up on what the initial purchase price was. I have found some notes that where there's actually a public sale of the property, but it identifies it as a 20-acre parcel. So I'm thinking that may be the full property that the Navy was selling at the time. That their asking price was around $300,000. But
I think Mr. Smith may have it, but the agreement was 18 acres, I believe, and it was a private sale. I'm not sure I understand that, but it was for $1. But
there was a bankruptcy sale that appeared that the school board was successful in the bankruptcy sale for a $10 sale, but it was about $300 and it appears to be liens and mortgages based on Mr. McFadden. I believe when you get mortgages, et cetera.
300 or 300?
Yes, $300,000. It was a mix of a lot of lien debtors in order to build the complex. The parcel is 17 acres, including the Chase Park parcel. I know it's kind of hard to see, but that was the 17 acres that keep referring to into the documents, plus the 4.183 here. And this was Chase Park. That was the experimental station. That went back and forth with different leases. But we were able to get that back from the state as long as we used it for recreational space type purposes, which we did. We built the Chase Park. The school board was very cooperative, and we were very there building the road. But that's exactly what happened to the pad station.
So the 300 in liens would also include the property that Hamilton sits on, right?
Correct.
Mr. Mayor, members of the school board, I was neglected not introducing some additional staff persons from the city that are here that were not advertised.
This is Dr. Belmont Williams.
Otherwise, he's known as Chris Smith, and he works in our planning department. And also, we have our Recreation and Youth Services Director, Mr. Mike Kirby, and also our Deputy City Clerk, Ms. Tracy Lee.
Well, Ms. Rinaldi, I see you have paperwork in front of you. Is there anything additional that your staff has looked into?
no, the primary discussions that we have, and Mr. George referenced the appraisal that had been done on the property. The appraisal was really done on approximately 4 acres of the property that we're talking about, not the full 8.5 acres that we're discussing today. The primary element and the element that was providing value to the property was the 2-story A10 building that's approximately 16,000 square feet. And during the discussions that we had, for me to replace that building, even at a minimal cost, and as we know, new construction, we're looking at about $170 a square foot. If I was to do it at $100 a square foot, I'd be somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.6 million just to replace that structure that we've had. And I think we've all had multiple discussions about the lack of storage space for records, surplus storage, warehouse storage, and we're kind of struggling at this point, trying to fill every nook and cranny that we have relative to storage. So that was the only other element that we were looking at, was the actual value of what it would take to replace a 16,000 square foot building that would have the potential to get us out of some of the storage dilemmas that we have presently.
Mr. George, I think you insinuated perhaps that the life cycle of that building, in your opinion, has concluded. Do you feel this?
Well, I mean, it's gone through a number of renovations. It's obviously gone through a number of tenants at this point right now. So probably the best use for that facility would not be an instructional space or even an administrative space, but probably would be warehousing due to the age of HVAC and other systems within that building.
Are we talking about the front building or the back two buildings?
We're talking about the A10 building, which is the two-story front building.
I had the appraisal here from 2012. At that time, the appraiser estimated that the building had about eight more years of life in it, and I think that's probably underestimated, but it had a value in the appraisal of $410,000. We have used it for, this is our second year, for classroom and instructional type things, and it works so well, of course, we're expanding it from 1 group to 4 this year, so that's worked well for us.
Good, just ask for clarification on that. So that's a different building than what Mr. Rinaldi is referring to as the storage building that we're currently utilizing.
No, it's one and the same.
So do we have a facilities use agreement that you all are using it for certain things and we're using?
No, it's part of the lease. The city has it for their exclusive use as part of the lease.
But we're storing things in it?
No, we are not. We have two metal buildings which are immediately to the east that we use for surplus storage that
That's what I was asking.
are much worse condition.
Yeah, maybe pull that picture up so everyone
This is the metal building we're speaking of, that is currently being used. The storage buildings are over here that probably
That's where the old
those are the
warehouse
ones that are involved. I think Mr. Rinaldi and I both agree those are at the end of their road. This is the metal building. This is an engineered metal building. It has the structure. I mentioned the storage building is a wood structure. This is metal frame, metal structure, beams, skin, and very durable.
I just want to say, just right out of the get-go, I'm 110% behind whatever our two organizations can do to utilize this property for the community. Whether they're taxpayers or whether it's the school board taking money out of taxpayers' money out of their left pocket, or the city of Sanford taking taxpayer money out of their right pocket, they're all taxpayers and they all deserve to have quality, good services. I also think that, I'm not an appraiser, but I also know that a piece of property is only worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. And I'm not sure that there's anybody that's willing to pay $1.2 million for that piece of property.
if you can find that person, send them my way.
Yeah, right?
I got some property in Texas I need to sell.
The
Exactly.
school board has had it for sale for $1 million in 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah, I
I
think
don't know
it's
if you've had any serious.
nobody's, never nobody's. I think I picked up exactly, Mr. George, on what you pointed out earlier about the highest and best use for the property, and that really continued public use until demand is such that more intense residential can be recognized is the recommendation, is how I read this appraisal. I think there are challenges on this property regardless of how it moves forward, because there have been so many years of joint use. I think we've created an onion and until we peel back all of the layers to really get to master planning this property probably is maybe where we're at with this. I mean, right now, our buses utilize part of your driveway to get onto the Hamilton property to run the bus ramp, but the kids that need to use that field, there's no parking for it, so the folks that park to use that are parking on the bus ramp, which is fine. But then if you all want to use, there's no parking for the stadium except the school board property. I mean, I've been to my fair share of River Rats games, and that's where they're parking. So it's just, there's so much going on that corner that without us really master planning and looking reasonably at the best and current use of that property. You all are using it far more than we are. I mean, you all are, I was surprised you didn't show that picture with the cars all parked on it, because that's what's usually on that, it's usually full of cars.
I left out the one that had all the semi-trailers parked on this side, and people started using for parking for their transport.
Yeah.
Tom, can you go to the last slide also, and that'll bring up some of the parking that, everything on our, if we're looking on the right, the Chase Fields all the way over there, these are all grass parking slips. So we'll be able to utilize that more so for the Memorial Stadium and in the back, because it's a short walk through there. And it doesn't show that there's we'll help clean up that road a little bit, that has a big ditch on the side of it. Maybe we can do something to talk with Public Works so that we can identify people out of your parking lane and park them over here and put a sign or what have you. Because we're actually having runoff tournaments from the new Seminole complex, and those people are coming from out of town. Everyone's parking there all day, and there are cars in that location.
Yeah.
So this will help that situation too.
So I'm all in for figuring out how best to utilize the facility for the community with the comments that I already made.
So I concur 110% with what you said as well. Mr. Rinaldi, do we use that building for storage of any kind right now?
No.
Okay.
The A10 building, which is the two-story we are not, is exclusively used by the city of Seminole.
Okay. Could we look at a lease purchase if we needed to? If we needed to use any portion of it for temporary storage?
Well, I think our overall goal is probably to do away with the two metal storage buildings that we presently have. And one of the options we were looking that kind of falls in line here, as you can see to the upside, is where those two metal buildings are. If we were to carve out those metal buildings and make that as part of the deal of sale to the city, then we'd be able to provide additional parking. And then maybe we do something with either a lease buyback or something with the A10 building, because we would want to use kind of the double high storage space there for our surplus storage as well. So I mean, I think there are some opportunities there.
And I greatly appreciate your comments, sir, but if I've got 1,000 kids in that area right there, are we really interested in having semis, short semis, loading and unloading through that? Because right there at the south side is your loading dock door that's facing the back end of the field.
But that's the current storage loading dock. I think what Mr. Rinaldi, you're talking about is demolishing the current storage and then looking at A10.
Well, let me bring up one exhibit that we talked about that may help clarify.
Wait, Tom,
Okay, so what we were thinking was that the turquoise area is approximately 2 acres, and that the school district would maintain that for their surplus, and then we in turn would give the city the 2 metal buildings probably for demolition, and then would be turning over, I believe it's close to 6 acres of the overall 8 acres. So that was one of the proposals that we had discussed as well.
so in the turquoise area there, that's where the A10 building is now?
Yes, top right corner is the A10 building, yes.
How does that building get the name A10?
It's good for something.
It was for ASC services one time. It was adaptive technology.
Right.
So I'm no land planner, but that kind of puts a little kink in the works in developing that property if we want to create an enclave essentially in the middle of it. I don't know why would we do that?
Well, we would be supplanting the surplus warehouse space that we would be losing, that we need at this point.
I mean, this is what you do for a living. Do you think that's a good idea? Or are we just trying to fit a Trojan something in here for for surplus, because that's the building we have talked about for 3 years as using as the East Side Community Center as part of that overall piece of property. And you want to use it for storage and bring trucks in and out of it?
Well, there will be vehicles and trucks primarily from the district going in and out, but typically, if you're looking at the recreational use, most of that will be happening after a school day for practice and for games on weekends. We would not have any of those type of services going on at that time.
It's used all day long though in the summer. So for those 2.5 months of summer, it is occupied morning through into the evening. So
That will assume be year-round, with my brother's keepers and use. I mean, it's used for expressive use during the summer months. The other 3 organizations that we're talking about entertaining will be using it year-round. And Mr. Rinaldi, I think you said that is about half of what you actually project your needs for warehousing. So is this a temporary fix for the?
I believe it is a temporary fix until we find a permanent home, or, you know, that's where I was saying is if we could reach an agreement where we would then be able, because I've got close to 20,000 square feet of surplus warehouse happening there. I'm replacing it with 16. What I'm saying is we probably would fill it up fairly quickly with what we're hearing that we need relative to record storage and overall surplus warehouse.
So can I ask you a question? If we need it for storage, and I get that, what would it cost you to build a very primitive 20,000 square foot building that we could use for storage to replace what we're tearing down?
Approximately $2 million, about $190 to $100 a square foot.
But only, do you have that in your budget?
No, I do not, Ms. Chapman.
Okay.
just for clarification, because it's real easy to, because the mayor's been most involved in this, and I've been into the 810 building once to teach Wesley youth ladies and to the complex, but I just don't want to get lost here. The 20,000 square feet of storage is only in the 2 metal buildings right now. There's no storage currently in the 810 building.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, I see. And so what you're talking about is moving what's in those 2 metal buildings into the 810 building rather than somewhere else.
Correct.
We have another place for it.
At this point right now, we do not.
What happened to the school in Longwood that was closed?
It's still being utilized by the city of Longwood. We have our virtual school there.
It's still utilized totally, and not knowing what the future holds, we constantly looking at that property for many other uses. But, you know, I agree with what all the board members have said, that, you know, we want to offer a great opportunity for all of our citizens. At the same time, we have needs and the city have needs, and I know while dealing with the way the city of the Onion is, Mrs. Lockhart said, I know in the past, while we're doing it, I think it needs to be master planned, and the timing is right, and that we're doing all the construction at Hamilton, and I know we have a very creative architect working on that. But I know there was discussion, especially with the new sports complex here in Seminole County, that the stadium itself is perhaps too small to host certain types of baseball tournaments. I think it was State College, there was a couple of feet too short, that outside wall. Is there any discussion on expanding that wall further back?
I don't really see that happening at any given point in time, because then you get into the ditch, and you get into, you know, a lot of additional problems that would be on top of. I mean, in a perfect world, I would say absolutely. I want to move that back and change that wall. You know, we get complaints because of the concrete block.
Right.
And you give a lot of people, you know, some won't come just for that simple fact. But that's not in any of our radar right now. I
So, I think there are other ways to skin a cat for storage than building a $2 million building. I think there are lots of vacant spaces. I think there's probably some property, there's an airport that wouldn't mind leasing some space, and this is a temporary thing. But I think to make a long-term land planning decision based on a temporary storage facility is probably not a good thing. So we might want to look at alternative options in the meantime. But one of the challenges, and I heard a comment in part of your presentation that talked about identifying property as surplus. And I don't know if Dr. Griffin, you want to address that, but as a school district, we had some challenges that when we identify property as surplus, it's very different than when a local county government or city government identifies it for surplus. We don't get to keep it and then sell it. A charter school would have the ability to come in and take it for free before we have the opportunity to sell it to anyone or make an agreement with anyone. I think that's correct.
Exactly right. It's happened to several districts around the state. They surplus property, hoping to put it up for sale. Before they could put it up for sale, the charter school will into it.
And that's beyond our control. So we have to be careful about that.
One question I have, and Tom, you might know, does the city of Sanford own a building anywhere that could possibly be used for storage?
Joe and I have talked about that extensively. I can't, the size that, and if I understand it, it's 50,000 square feet.
20.
Our eventual build out will be 50,000 once we consolidate all storage, but I mean, we're looking for 10 at this point right now would be an immediate benefit to us.
I don't know if we have anything that's even 10, or we can look. I was looking for a more permanent solution. I think even this situation is going to call a Band-Aid for a point of time. Nothing comes to mind immediately, but there might be 10,000 feet, much different than 50,000.
Well, this is the first that I've heard details of conversations that Mr. Rinaldi has had with Mr. George. So I'm going to look to Mr. Rinaldi. Is there any information that we can all hear from you today? I know Mr. George did a very good historical view and great sharing of information of what happened on that property. Has your research any additional information that you can share?
No, I think that the key for us is finding additional storage space. Is this the ideal location? No, we wouldn't design it, but the fact that the district owns the building and is leasing it right now was one of the options we looked at. An additional option we looked at was working possibly with the airport in order to get a reduced rate on a building, and we looked at a couple of buildings, but their priorities are a little different than our priorities. We really couldn't afford the space that we were looking at, even somewhere in the 10,000 square foot range, to take those initial steps. So at this point, we're kind of looking for storage space. This is an ideal property for us because we own it. That's really the strength of it, is that it's something that we own, as opposed to, and we were looking at other options to benefit the district by providing them the additional space for the additional parking on the schematics that we've seen at the time.
Ms. Sullivan?
So Galileo is building a new school, and they're going to be moving in the old Midway. Could we not use that for storage?
We are looking at that for possible storage as well, but the largest building that we have on campus there, we have under present lease with the county.
With Seminole County?
Yes. Seminole County.
And when does that lease up?
I do not know.
Okay. I'd like to know that, and what they generate in income for us. Just
They
curious.
use it as a community building.
I think that the community building concept that's being proposed on this parcel would probably negate the need for that community building be used in Midway.
I would disagree with you on
You what?
that. I would disagree because the one at Midway serves the Midway community.
It'd be interesting to can ask the folks in the county how frequently that building is actually rented, because I think people were using it for maybe family reunions, wedding receptions, that sort of thing. I think it's very small. I don't know, I'd be curious to see how often it's actually utilized.
Because, well, by the crow fly from here to the Midway community isn't that far, but I think historically, many communities think they're different communities within the city of Sanford. And although there's no white picket fence, I think there's a perception, but, you know, maybe that's one of our goals as we sit here and collaborate. We need to have the community come together and collaborate as well, because I think there's strength in numbers, because if you go to My Brother's Keeper and the organizations that you currently have in those buildings, I think they serve more than just that square mile radius around Hamilton Elementary. And I think the more that we can work it together, I think it's going to be better for the long term. I think if either entity, whether the school district or the city of Sanford, invested in this property, I agree with you, Mrs. Lockhart, we have to look long term. I'd hate to do construction on it once and then come back a few years later and do construction on it a second time. That being said, we have to have as our priority for growing school district with children, and we know how many white pipes are going to be coming out of the ground in the city of Sanford and surrounding areas of unincorporated Sanford, and we have to make sure that we're meeting the needs for that population that's coming in, because some might have children. So you hate to cut off your nose to spite your face. And I thank staff for being creative and looking for solutions and swaps, but you don't want to have one entity be in a better position than the other, because we're all serving the same people at the end of the day. Were there other solutions, Mr. Rinaldi, that you discussed?
We looked at some property up by the cemetery, which is immediately to the north of Seminole High School, but unfortunately there was limited access in. We looked at the old gymnastics building that's at the end of the airport in the northwest corner of the airport. That facility was actually in worse shape than the two metal buildings that we have as well. And we looked at one parcel that the airport presently owned that was around 15 acres, but they were wanting in excess of $100,000 an acre on that. So,
Can I just ask, are there any monies programmed for the future warehouse or storage?
no, there are not.
I think that was one of the hindrances in looking for properties and things, if there was no money available to purchase anything.
Would there be space on the Midway Transportation property to erect a metal building?
And I guess what would be the southwest corner, just immediately to the left. There is some frontage space there, but that's right on 46 as well. I mean, it would be tough to put a metal building fronting right on 46, especially after talking with the airport on what their expectations were to happen on 46 once the widening happens. So.
And we're going to take a lot of that land for the new school that we're building, correct?
Yeah, we'll take right up to where the main entry drive is coming in.
Where is the new school going to?
In between the Midway Transportation and Midway Elementary.
That's the new high school.
That's the Millennium.
Middle school.
It's the new middle, it's.
The Millennium Middle School, which is currently behind Seminole High School, we're planning on turning that to a 9th grade center for Seminole High School. And then the Millennium Middle School will be moved over to behind Midway. And we really feel the synergies, correct me if I'm wrong, board members, but having two fine arts magnets together with the mentorships in middle school to elementary. As you know, Midway doesn't really have an auditorium. They could go over to the middle school and have their plays and such there. It's a better joint use to have a clear, fluid.
So 9th grade center is only for Seminole, or are we going back to that countywide?
Only for Seminole High School.
There are 2 kids over there from high school.
low.
It's the right thing to do for more personalized, counseling and individualized attention. When you have a campus that's large, it's, as we all know, to try to get everybody fed at least at lunch is
Well,
hard.
it was done once before. In fact, there was a time when Crooms was the 9th grade center.
Right.
How much so we lost the grant that we were going to use that when we made an offer for the trade and to throw some cash into the deal? Is that what you said earlier? Because we made an offer of what originally?
We proposed a property swap for our 2 acres at the aquatic center we talked about different acreages, but plus at that time, this was just our starting conversation, and we did talk about hybrid analysis. We looked at just land value according to the property appraiser. We looked at what parcels in the surrounding area had sold for, and came up with, at that time, we were giving the school board, we would swap the properties and an additional $250,000.
I think, and I know each one of us has been a part of different conversations, so it's kind of frustrating to not have had, I was kind of hoping we could have a timeline. We talked about this then, this was presented, and because I'm realizing that I only have seen little parts and pieces, and I think other board members have only seen parts and pieces, but at some point in one of the conversations that I was a part of, we had talked about hoping to assemble some more property around Seminole as a long-term solution. And acquiring that piece around the pool would certainly help with that. And when you're talking about assembling pieces with a long-term goal in mind, the value of what you receive isn't necessarily its true face value, it's the value of what you will achieve at the end of the assemblage. So I think we keep looking at this in a very short-term, swap, immediate situation. What we're really talking about is a long-term, at the end of the day, what each entity hopes to achieve. And I'm concerned that not all of us have the true big picture end goal in mind in this conversation. That's a concern of mine as I'm hearing conversations.
I think I've been pretty clear about what my end goal is. And that's that piece of property so that I can create soccer fields and football fields, additional parking. I have had discussions about a baseball training facility and an outside operator coming in and rehabbing the buildings that are in the back. We've had discussions about the need to put some equipment in part of that and the need to get the true training facility for baseball, have an open arena from Chase Park and come up into the backside of the 2 buildings that everybody keeps saying that we need to demolish, but I may have an outside person that wants to create the training facilities. We're in dire need of a East Side Community Center. Everything at the bottom of that picture is low income. I wouldn't even say it's moderate income. There's some categorically poor people in that area that could use the services that we offer on the west side for our community. I do not. There's not a bone in my body that says that is a need for a storage facility at 16,000 feet. It does have one docking bay, and we've seen it. Yeah, it stacks high, but the rest of it is not. I'd rather put a basketball court in there or something. I don't think it fits. I think the highest and best use that these appraisals are showing is for residential, but that would, the only way you'd be able to do anything right there is to do a tax credit deal, which creates another situation in our community for lower income and adds a whole lot more people into your school system in Hamilton and Goldsboro Elementary or whatever state they need to go into. On top of that, the zoning is such right now, and as Ms. Lockhart said, we've created ourselves into an onion where the uses have been scheduled. I would have a real hard time with a zoning request to turn that into high-level, high-density residential. We're getting ready to build already, well, it's not really, but for the seniors, you know, I don't know if you saw the news, but there's a tax credit deal coming in on the Redding's Garden property, which is about 4 blocks from here. So we could even do some kind of senior deal. You know, they have to have so many things happening within the area to get the tax credit. We could actually help them out on that arena. So I agree that we're talking about temporary things, and you know, if it truly is temporary, let's talk about the temporary side of what you need to do with that building. But my plans have been very specific, and I have not been able to get the cash, additional investment in there because of the way our lease is written. Even though it says 7 years with additional 7 years here, there afterwards, it's still a 90-day out. We can walk in 90 days. We can say we're out, or you could say, more importantly to me, you can say I'm out. And stewards of taxpayer money that we all are. Great comment that it's all coming from the same people's pockets. We're the right pocket, you're the left pocket, whatever it was.
We're the right pocket.
Yeah. You're the back pocket. Right now.
Can I add something, Mr. Mayor? You know, I appreciate so much Tom giving us the history and Amy saying it's an onion, but the truth is, it's a kid.
That phone rings 3 times from the same child.
Yeah, you better. The truth is, you know, I don't think it really matters going backward. Now, we've just got to go forward with the piece of property from where we are right now. Because I don't think 20 years ago or 30 years ago, it just doesn't matter that much. I think we just got to start from right here. And I have to say, with absolute, you know, 100% behind the mayor here, I have had opportunity to meet the lady at Expressly You and see what she does for those kids over there on almost no budget, and have seen, you know, what my brother's keeper does on no budget. I frequently go to events, back to school events in the Georgetown community, and if you ask them what they want in Georgetown, number one, it's a community center. And I just really, just have to say, I agree. I think it would be just a real sad thing to have to see that thing go for storage when it could be so much more.
Dr. Calderon. So we've kicked the can down the road for years in the conversations, all our many conversations, and as our leadership changes up and down. My vision is aligned with the city of Sanford to have this be 100% for the community use. I only see that as positive. That said, I don't think a little bit more conversation. I know we have unanswered questions, but I feel like a lot of my questions have been answered today. Perhaps at mayors and managers, or we could have a work session purely with other entities to determine the storage issue that we seem to be challenged with. Or business advisory board or somewhere along those lines, and see what we can work out there. I don't want us in the business of surplus, you know? I want it done. Yeah.
Okay, we just got to do something. We've got to have storage. So there's got to be a, you know, if you think, Tom, there's any chance that there'd be something else that the city would have that we could use for the storage?
You can certainly look. I mean, if I understand it correctly, this doesn't solve the problem. It's just a placeholder. It's a little bit, but I'm not clear. When we started this quest, we were looking for something for 10 acres for 50,000 square feet. We're talking something smaller, just to do a placeholder. We can look. But my understanding is the school board has no money programmed or budgeted for this.
Right. That's the whole point. We don't have any way to
would it be possible, and this is me monkeying around in your world, so I don't mean for this to be offensive in any way, shape, or form, so I don't pretend to understand the job you do. But would it be possible if we were to fast forward, make the property exchange, however that happens, and you own that entire piece, you reapply for the grant money comes in, it's able to fund this and whatever other programmatic things that you might be able to do there. Would there be an opportunity in your budget then to free up some of your dollars? Would that grant money be able to then free up some other dollars creatively that we could then look at being able to utilize that in a swap situation?
If you think you're broke as a school board,
Yeah.
you should listen to this guy over here with the white shirt on in the back.
Yeah.
No, but I like that idea. And I don't mean it in any form or fashion either. And I mean, there is a loading dock. There is things that we could work on in the short run of it. This is not a do-all, end-all on the backside of the building. If that's what you need, whatever. I don't know how many square feet that high loading dock is up in there. If you can stack it up in there, I don't think it's really that wide. And I can't see us leasing that part out of it or using that in the immediate. I'm more concerned about the other property and not having trucks in and out of there for, the next 15 years.
Could some of the monies that would be utilized to do the site work or whatever come from part of the penny sales tax? Could there be any, some from your portion of the pennies, maybe some front loading from the county, maybe, I'm just trying to, I'm not the brightest bulb sitting at this table, but I know there are a lot of bright people sitting in this room that can figure out a way to make this deal happen. It seems like we keep talking about the things that won't make it happen, and I'd love to have a bunch of ideas on the table of things that would make it happen, and then we can start from there.
And from my perspective, in a perfect world, if none of us had to worry about budgets, amen. I think we need a sports complex, a community center, it's all great. But as you said, Mr. Mayor, we both have to be good financial stewards of what have been invested in our communities and school district. And as much as I'm passionate about the sports complex, I have to be responsible to the budget and say, would it really be fair if I'm giving A away for B, knowing that it's 50% of the value? I need to be able to discuss that. And we have needs in the school district, you have needs in the city, and I will never pretend to know all of your opportunities, as I know you don't know all of ours. But I guess what I was hoping for is almost one from column A, one from column B, one from column C. Let's pick this. Yeah, that works. This doesn't work. That there seems to be, what I've learned today, that everybody seems to be having side discussions. And this is the first open forum that at least we're hearing in the same direction. I think in the heart of hearts, we all want a sports complex. But at the end of the day, we don't want to give away something for proverbial free to have us being held holding the bag. We have needs and future needs we don't know. We have a very cloudy crystal ball at best. We don't know how many children are going to be moving into the city of Sanford. And as you know, you're having as much opportunity finding vast land for sports complex. That's the amount of vast land we would need if, God forbid, we needed to do another school. So it's not that we're not supportive of the idea. I'm just trying to process everything in the last half hour of, I don't want to say yes and then regret it for the next 20 years.
We can't build an elementary school on 8 acres anyway. I agree with what you said, but this isn't the parcel to hang on to if that's the concern. Because you can't do anything with 8 acres.
Right, but just as we are creative at Seminole High School with having a 9th grade center and then 10, 11, 12, if all of these houses get refurbished, and we have a great influx of citizens moving in, which I'm sure you'd be thrilled with, that maybe we have a primary learning center, and, you know, Hamilton would be two kind of schools, you know, K through 2, 3 through 5, or 3-6, and, you know, I really like the idea of primary learning going all the way to 6. That would ease the overcrowding we have at Millennium and Sanford Middle. So, as you said, Mrs. Lockhart, you know, we almost need everything on the table to be really creative with finding solutions. Because I agree with you, Ms. Haney. I mean, it was great to have the history lesson because I didn't know a lot of that. But I want to focus on the future and solutions for our community.
So is the only hang up on this property that's sort of building?
I think that's one of the hang-ups. I'm hearing another hang-up.
Yeah, now it's starting to sound like more.
Well, let's be honest, I mean, all these houses aren't going to get turned into masses. I mean, you're not going to have a whole lot more people living there now than you will 10 years from now. Not right there.
No, it's that the children that would live in the houses a little further out down Celery would potentially be attending the school. It's not that the houses would be right there.
But it's all the new development.
Joe, I'm sure the answer is it can't be done.
No, we haven't heard that yet.
Calculated about what it would cost to repair the old warehouse, okay, it's just beyond repair. It was real bad when I was there.
You're talking the two metal warehouses?
The two existing.
The two existing,
We're in bad shape.
There's actually really, they're, right now, Carol's in the process of moving anything of value out of there because they're in such bad shape. You can break in just by raising one of the wall panels. But
People will figure that out.
That was used for storage.
But that's why, and with what Cheryl's going through with the GovBiz and all that, getting things online, I don't mean to speak for her, but our discussions have been, she has seen her storage needs begin to decrease as a result of that because there's more turnover rather than having a chair sit there for 2.5 years. I mean, things are moving and things are going. So that's why when Tom and I first started talking, she was talking, well, if I wanted to do all of my warehousing, it's around 50,000 square feet, including what we have at the airport annex and all that. But, you know, we've reduced that down in looking at what's happening here. That, yeah, we could probably get away with that double bay, even working with IT to do some of the long-term storage there if we were to dress up one of the bay, and that may resolve the issues of trucks coming in because all you're going to have is step vans coming in and taking record boxes in, as opposed to, you know, dropping off chairs and dropping off other items. So,
Mr. Rinaldi, especially after a trip to Apple, I really feel less is more. And with, I know we're trying to be a paperless society, but by law, we have to keep certain things hard copy. And with Amazon Prime, you would think that if we need some of these things delivered, we could get them delivered. I hate that we are spending more time discussing storage than we are the education of children, which is what our primary goal is supposed to be. I know you were doing an audit of our facilities. When is that going to be concluded, that we might find other nooks and crannies?
well, at this point right now, we have not actually done the storage facilities. We're first taking a look at all the administrative facilities and the way we're moving staff around. So, but this will eventually be part of the audit as well, whichever structure we still own after the discussion.
Ms. Mahaney?
Does the school board still own that old plaza on the corner of Airport Boulevard and A.G. Thomas?
Yes.
What's,
I was part of a group that toured that facility just recently, and we fought over the storage there.
what's being done in there beside the gift for teaching? Oh, there's warehousing.
Jury's Academy, there was a middle school and high school. And
So there's no room there then? Okay, I just didn't know if it was all being used or if it was partially vacant.
We fought over it just a couple of weeks ago. There were several of the departments over there looking for storage space or for space for new programs, et cetera. So that is taken every square inch of it, including the hallways, by the way.
Mr. Jones?
So, back to what, so really we're talking about, again, just the other two buildings, those are fine. So the one building, the all storage needs are, is serving, is part of your storage, correct?
Yeah.
And that's.
Well, the A10 building is that's being utilized by the city. The city has that as part of the lease agreement. We're not using it for any storage at this point.
But that's what you would envision that you'd be able to use.
That was, when we began talking, that was one of the things that we thought was, since money wasn't available to give us even the $400,000 at the appraisal, we said, well, let's carve out, and we'll then give you the two buildings, so you'd obtain all of that real estate around it, and then we would keep the A10 building, and you utilize it for storage, or small programs.
Mr. Kelly?
So we'll be used for storage and small after school or we could.
We really haven't talked about specifically which programs would be in there, but right now it's set up and it has been used in the past for training, professional development, and those sort of things.
But as far as what your operational long-term needs are, that building is still would be more of a storage Band-Aid than a complete fix.
It wouldn't, it wouldn't be what I would design as an architect to use as a storage building.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm sitting here playing with the storage buildings and costs.
That's what I was doing. Great minds think alike.
So having not said anything and just kind of listen, so why can't we go ahead and move forward with, with swaps of properties, and the school board is still allowed to use that building up until, I don't know, pick a time start. Obviously, you're gonna have to program in the money eventually somewhere. I mean, that need is not gonna go away.
If I could interject, warehousing rolls up to me, and I'm listening to the surplus, and I'm listening to this and realize that we made some assumptions in this conversation. Our assumption is that the surplus operation is currently configured is the way we should continue. Maybe it's time for us to look, and Dr. Carter, you actually suggested this to me maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Maybe it's time for us to look at this and see if the cost of this operation makes sense. Maybe some of this stuff, maybe we're spending more money trying to save this stuff and reuse it than we are saving. Than we would have spent if we were to buy it. And maybe we're just wasting money. So let me and my team, before, I know I hear it loud, everybody's frustrated, let me and my team look at this. We really have to look closely at this. And Dr. Griffin, I'll report back to you if there's anything, we'll get some costs together. It will cost us more money to do that bad, so we may have to work through that with you. But let me see how those numbers work out. Just eliminate this whole idea of surplus storage. Instead of picking stuff up from schools and taking it here, we may find another approach. Maybe just take it straight to a private party, just keeps it and does with it as they want to.
Just, my whole thing is, I'm just looking at it going, well, that building would serve, a need for the school board, at least on a, short to mid, a temporary basis. The rest of the property, the city could utilize, hopefully in a shorter, get completely utilized in a shorter term for what this plan is. And this plan means really to show that building still being there. And to me, I would rather see the city be able to use, 80% of that total thing in a positive way moving forward for the community as a whole. And if you guys still need to use that one section, on a short, temporary basis until obviously, you program what you need to do. I mean, I'm fine with that. I'd rather see us go ahead and use, get moving.
I do have to say that I don't see, and I'm speaking in turn, guys, I see no way we're going to program into money for a new warehouse in our 10-year plan. I don't see it. We're struggling to meet our educational needs.
We borrowed for the first time in a long time.
Mr. Triplett, you made a good point that, you know, you were cash strapped as well. You know, we started these discussions a long time ago. You did get a grant of $250,000. But as you well know, that'll pay for cements and walls, and, you know, you have a long way to go. What is your envision of a time frame for moving forward? You're saying that grants and donors didn't want to donate unless you owned it, but...
We have to own it to get the grants. So we've got 1.4 million for Parks and Rec in the last 2 years. So, I mean, we will, once we own it, we will immediately go out on grant writing to finalize this.
And that doesn't happen overnight. And when we come back to looking at, as you said, Mr. Jones, let's look at a swap in another way. I just want to make sure that even though all of this property, no matter who owns it, is all really at the end of the day the taxpayers, I just don't want to be left holding the proverbial short end. I mean, do we know exactly the value of the Seminole High smaller parcel of land versus this land and facilities? I know you'd offered another $250,000 plus the land. So who's left whole with that?
I think we're fairly close in regards to the land. It's the improvement on the land.
But the property by the Sanford Pool is not accessible, right?
Well, when it comes to the best use, we are the individuals that have the best use for it. So that gives it a little bit more value, but accessible for anyone else, no. It's only accessible by us.
I thought that was against the law. I thought you always had to have access to your property.
Well, there's a gate on it. You can go, there's a gate on it. You can go through your lot to get to it. I picked my boy up from soccer practice for many nights saying, hey, this is our property.
Yeah. So, and I think again, that goes back to the end game is not just that parcel by the pool. The end game is to get the parcel by it's a means to an end. The parcel by the pool is contiguous to another parcel that we might be interested in. So you can't just look at that parcel as being the end all be all. Without that parcel, we're not contiguous to the other pieces.
We don't have all the pieces that we would desire there in order to relieve some of the parking issues, some of the sports
So you gotta start
practice
assembling
issues.
something.
So this would be the first step.
Right.
And we've initiated negotiations with the other property owners, but
What were their estimates? About 300,000 for the residential?
was 350,000 was their asking price.
It's me.
Mr. Bonaparte, I know that at one point, or Mr. George, we were talking about, and I think it's being done or has been done, getting a complete inventory of all vacant city-owned property. And, you know, maybe we need to think about this when that inventory is done, or if it's done, and it needs to be done, because I think we have more vacant city-owned property than we realize, then maybe we need to look and see if there's something else that we also have that might be, the school board might have a better use for than us. We just don't know all of our vacant property right now.
Instead of canceling the 4 good programs we have going on in the building currently, I'd like to reinvestigate or look at, I did not go, Mr. Rinaldi, to the gymnastics building. I mean, you said it was in poor condition. Our folks use it every day for storage. Our public works department uses it for storage. Our facilities folks this year put in some repairs, but I don't know if they weren't structural. So I don't know if that's a possibility. I mean, it's a very large building on the square footage. We also have 10 acres behind that we own of property. And that has been used for warehousing, storage, that type of stuff.
Where is this in, Tom?
The gymnastics building on 25th place, the old Stiffy building, the gymnastics metal building. 25th.
So we was using it for a while, right?
We own 10 acres behind that, I believe, and there may be some possibilities there, just coming into that to make that useful. I'm not familiar with the
most of the storage while I was there was heavy equipment. is primarily what they were using it for. That's not the level of storage we need at this point right now. It's records, and it's certainly, we've got about 22,000 square feet worth of surplus storage that we're taking a hard look at right now.
Can you call the square footage of that building? I don't know.
No, I
Was it a
do not.
gymnasium?
The gymnasium building, 10,000 square feet.
Yeah, that's it, okay.
It's on a website.
That has large roll-up doors, and I just don't think it can be replicated or refurbished by the city. I have to look at it.
And it's a pretty new building.
Right.
All skin and roof skin probably have to be replaced, but pretty new metal structure, concrete, diaphragm, foundation, it's a 50-year life cycle capital building, and we use resources for years and years.
George, when we met with the airport, I thought that they had some either extension or that there was some planning that took that structure off the table.
We looked at that for a public works complex.
Okay.
We were going to build a two-story building. They said that was not allowed because of the flight.
Because of the height.
But the building that's there, we've used for many, many years. We actually were going to refurbish that building, use it for our warehouse for the public works complex. But it may be possibly retrofit that and make that usable. And it has rolled double doors and storage, but it takes some work.
Joe, what else is Fractal besides the paper copies? So you could look at scanning, I could just rate chart last one. Is there anything else Fractal besides that?
No, it's primarily comes from Tim Harper's group, and it's a fairly large archive that they have to keep for 7 years. And then there's a set of archives that they have to keep permanently that we're trying to accommodate at Tex Park right now.
I think we could probably scan that. I'm not going to say we could just scan it.
Well, eventually he was looking at scanning, which would have a significant impact on his needs as well. Yes.
Why, does it have to be saved on paper, or can it be scanned?
It can be. It's my understanding that it can be scanned.
I think I just had, these are first conversations for me in a lot of different realities, and I'd almost want documented the prices or costs for all of us, because it might, I mean, I know how expensive it would be to ship off all that paper to get it scanned. Well, let's look at what the investment is, but then it might be offset by not needing that much square footage in a facility. And I think I need to know all the costs and expenses to say, okay, if we are doing a swap, what else can leave us held harmless? Because I didn't know about whatever this gymnastics building is.
I can't picture where that is.
Yeah, I don't either, but I think we almost need it itemized. Here are the parcels of land we have, here are the parcels of land or facilities or whatever, Sanford, and go through to make sure that we're serving the needs of the community, because we know they need positive experiences in that community.
I like, Ms. Mahaney, I like the fact that you all are doing inventory of your unused property, because maybe something will come up that would work so that we could use that for storage rather than.
Yeah, that's really what I'm wondering is if something's gonna come up and we say, oh, wow.
Now, I don't think, we certainly are hung up on having this, our storage in this building. Sure. But it's a building we now own, and so it would save us from building another building or something, but if we could find something in lieu of this, I don't have any issue with it. But we sure go to the landfill building.
Okay, I apologize, I was talking to Mr. George, and I know that the bulk of the conversations have been between Joe and Tom. I think if we can kind of get a consensus, I think we're kind of beating a dead horse now. If we can get a consensus on taking a retrofit or a fit on that, the old gymnastics building, I've already gotten some numbers on what a cleanup of that could be, a reskin and such. Plus, we have 13 plus acres there that we may be able to do something with. And the piece of property that we have by you, and I know you're trying to buy the house that's right there for additional needs. Now that the two professionals know that, not just put words in the mouth exactly where we need to be, let's
good that we had this open discussion. So now I think you've heard from all of us that it's almost like, I hate to say playing the game Monopoly, but really you're looking at a lot of different pieces on it, and at the end of the day, we want to work together on it, but we don't want one person going in this direction, another person going in the other. So I think if solutions can be offered to us, that's when we can bring it for a motion and a vote and get going, because we know our community deserves it, and we know we have needs in the school district, and you have needs in the city, and we just want to make sure we're not stepping on each other's feet.
Absolutely. And Mr. George, will you reach out to your friends at the county and departments and see if maybe they have something also? I don't know if you've done that yet or not, but there's some moving parts going on over there too, that maybe temporarily we can structure something if they have an open warehouse or something that they might use.
I'll do it.
And I'll reach out to someone also on political end.
I'll get to work on looking at what it would take to retrofit that EPS building also. Be a good site. It's got plenty of property attached to it. It needs for expansion.
So am I hearing that you want to go dollar 100% of however we can figure out, if we can figure out dollar for dollar on the straight as the two public entities?
What I'm looking for is us to have a storage facility. I think there needs to be some cash involved in it. And I wasn't sure from what you said a few minutes ago, 250,000, that's still on the table, or is that not?
No, we lost that grant in
Okay,
March.
so there's no cash involved
We
in it?
would have to go out for another grant to try to get the purchase, and that's a year minimum for us to figure that out.
It's just, like Tina said, it just can't be that we're left holding the bag here. And I totally understand what you're trying to do, and I commend you for it, you know, what you've done in the city of Sanford myself, especially in the Midway area. And I certainly agree with what you're talking about, but I just don't think it can be that we are left with giving up property and we have nothing in exchange for it.
I want you to understand that there's nothing on the table. And that's not what I'm saying at all. We lost that grant in
Right.
March, so now we're trying to figure out another way that we need to do it.
Okay.
The question was very specific. Do we need to be dollar for dollar as public entities, so I know what I've got to do?
What do you mean by dollar for dollar?
If we have,
Do I think you're gonna come up with 1.3 million that the appraiser said? No, I'm not.
that's an unrealistic value.
I agree.
It's not even close to being a value.
Except it's a corner lot.
We're talking about a vacant piece of property that is situated in a position that the highest and best use to me is the continuation of a public service.
Jeff, again, trying to focus on the future, and we need to prime the pump on a lot of these things, because as you said, grants don't happen overnight, they take a year. And is there something we can do? I noticed in your PowerPoint presentation, you had two prior contracts signed by Mrs. Olive and Mrs. Schaffner by giving over, our authority for that property. Can we do that again so you can start writing the grants today while we have our continued discussions and before we solidify anything? Because quite frankly, I don't want you to miss any opportunities. Mr. Triplett, I know it's different to get a contribution from a donor versus a grant, but I don't want to pause anything. I think we both have to go forward, knowing that there might be some tweaks, but I for one, I don't know what the rest of the board feels, but from a school board commitment, I would be happy to sign or do cooperative agreements in that fashion.
I'd like to find, or Mr. Rinaldi, find a solution to an alternate solution to the storage issue that something similar, maybe in size, that will solve that. And then there are two different types of grants. You can do this for acquisition, which is one we've got before. But I think at this point, we probably would be more inclined to apply for the other type of grant, which is for actual construction. But if we work out the storage dilemma, we we could apply for a grant now, that when, if we vet this property, we can actually start building something so that it can be productive.
Can't do that on our property, though, can you, without?
We would have to own the ground.
Tom, let me just ask you, I know we're just discussing, we're just trying to figure this out, because I understand where the board is coming from. When you talk about the gymnastics building and some acreage, you're talking about potential swap? Is that what you're thinking could possibly happen? Because I think if it's the right size building or the right amount of property, I think that would do it. Because that would give us, and I haven't been to the building, I've gone to the property, I don't know.
I just emailed some pictures to Jill. I don't know if she'd be able to put them up, but the bottom line is if we were to construct a building for storage, it would parallel what the gymnastics building is right now, which is an open frame. You could easily get 2 stories worth of storage in it. So we would be swapping about $30,000 worth of, or 30,000 square feet worth of inadequate storage for 10,000 square feet as part of the deal, which we should be able to utilize.
Did you all, I'm sorry.
And you would retrofit it.
Yes, I'd like to look at it. I don't know.
Yeah.
See what's in the
Do you all own that building?
And we
10 or 12 acres behind also that we use for our outside store. We could swap that and make it permanent.
And what time frame are we looking at? I mean, we're all type A behaviors. I know Mr. Tripp has been very calm about waiting on this. We really don't want to kick this can down.
I mean, look at it and see what we'll take, but we'll do that immediately. Give you a report of what it would take to rehab and repurpose the building.
Yeah, I think that would, to me, I'd feel pretty comfortable bringing that to the board, but a retrofitted gym, some property, the other small pieces, Seminole, and maybe Joe and Tom to do something from my review, and I'll leave the board members and take it. I think we are very, very close to doing this. I think at the end of the day, we all want a place for our kids to have a nice place to play. This is the ideal spot to do it. We have a storage need, and it sounds like this gymnastics building could possibly do that for us. Just retrofit it.
What do you use that for now?
Storage.
Oh, is that picture just recently taken?
Yeah, that's a couple months ago when I visited. So it's mainly heavy equipment storage. They have the equipment out operational, so they bring it in. I believe in that.
Mr. Bellemore.
What I'm hearing, and I appreciate what we're getting everybody together at the same time, same place, hearing all the same things. So I think a great deal has been accomplished today. And I do agree that having Joe and Tom get together, hearing from the board members their respective concerns makes a big difference, and also hearing from the commission. And what I'm hearing also is that it has to be an agreement that has the smell test, that both the board and the commission can look to the public and say, this was done, and it was done with both parties coming out on top, both parties being treated fairly. You want to talk about that?
That's a heck of a lot nicer than the building you have in 13 in Melville, so I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that.
Hey, we could reuse those letters and make it in school.
The A was missing.
Oh, yeah, we want to make, no, there's one of gymnastics.
The good news is it comes with everything that's inside of it right now.
So can I, not to throw another monkey wrench out there, but I think it's probably better to go ahead and have this discussion here rather than have it come back later. I had heard that there might be some concern that later down the road, if we were to do this swap, the city of Sanford could decide in 10, 20 years, you know what, this whole soccer field thing, it's not really working out for us anymore, and the market's changed, and now we can sell this property to a developer. And I see we've got a lot of hourly rate going on in the corner over there.
How about
I'd
if
like
we
to
did,
ask the
how about if we
attorneys.
made it a perpetual park like we do at the historic stadium and the Chase Park?
That was something I was just wondering if we could go ahead and throw that out on the table, sleep tight.
The grants have structures, and Chris is kind of the grant guru, so they have structures. They won't give us $1 million and then we turn around in 20, 50 years and say, we're going to put a convenience store there. There's never any plan but hey, people get voted out of office.
Yeah, this conversation goes back and forth. something that's been discussed in many of our budget sessions, especially with, there's always a big concern about was we've got the website, community center and everything going on over there. This would essentially be, you said the contract we always made was just the same way that the county's got Eastmont and Westmont. Really, I mean, kind of a very similar situation.
Right.
And that, this property was part of that overall plan, and then, and again, just, I mean, I'm not gonna be too much longer, but just.
You'll always be in our hearts, so
Okay,
right?
that just- But the idea.
We need to pull road out of you, man.
But the idea being that yes, it would forever be part of our park system.
Because we've talked a lot about dollar for dollar and talked about values, but there's also the structure of the deal that I think we haven't really talked about. I think that's one thing that would probably be good to.
And it sounds to me that you're asking about a revert in the event that we swap land and the city does something different than what has been contemplated. And certainly we have agreements that we had before where there was a reverted law.
Isn't it, once we make something a park, we talked about this on 18th Street Park forever. Once we make it a park, we can't change it.
That's right. That's why we don't make the 18th Street a park. It's extremely difficult to go back from park to.
Let the attorneys work it out, I don't care.
It's not that you can't go back to it, it's just, it becomes a public perception thing.
Right.
I moved in next to a park, I needed it.
Right, exactly. And so I just, because I thought that that was something that might come up down the road as a potential obstacle that we could go ahead and just.
And I think that goes into the fact of what will the public ask, what are the questions that the residents may ask, and they give good answers, and that's an excellent question.
Dr. Tina,
Are we done, are we all on board on that part of it?
I think-
Shift gears on it real
So
quick.
Yeah,
what's the next step?
But the next steps that I understand is Mr. Rinaldi will be meeting with Mr. George, looking at the buildings and land swaps, coming back to a proposal to Mr. Bonaparte and Dr. Griffin to look at, review, present to both of our boards for vote and approval.
If I could, depending on what you all are talking about, I think the value of sitting down again together makes sense, and then making sure we're all then respectively taking the action.
And the one other action item I'd like for us to contemplate, because this is the first time we've heard it, but I'm sure once we digest it before our next meeting, I think Ms. Lockert, you had a great question about totally being used as a park forever and ever, amen. I think I challenge each of us to think with each of our constituency groups, what would be some of the questions we'd have to entertain, and I think the more that we can discuss them as a group and come up with a collaborative, same answer kind of vision, I think it would help both of us that we have the community on both of our sides, because really we're doing this for the community, so we don't want to disenfranchise any community members that are out there. So I think we have to think of what would the naysayers say, or what would those who want it say, to make sure that we have a united front with four-legged answers. Okay, is there anything else on this topic? If not, I see Mrs. Payne sitting there wanting to ask another question.
well, we were going to have a little time for some other topics. Right?
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I was just telling the mayor. I got three things real quick, and I'm going to take them from least important to most important. First of all, I want to thank you all so much for participating with us and putting in the sidewalk there in front of the retreat at Twin Lakes. I don't know why that little piece of sidewalk was never done, but I have to tell you that as school was coming to a close, it was wonderful to see the children on the sidewalk and not in the street. Okay, it was great. That's number one. Number two, I've had several complaints from parents of Seminole High. Seminole High is in my district, and Mr. George, I think this is for you way, way more than the school board. I just want them to know I've been getting some calls from Seminole High parents and Seminole High supporters. Tom, I guess there's a house on Ridgewood as you go down to Seminole High that puts out a lot of trash. Apparently they have it in the proper receptacles, but Waste Pro doesn't pick up until really, really late in the afternoon. And the parents are saying that as they were going to and from school and Okay, and it's embarrassing to parents of Seminole High.
Hey, I'm thrilled those apartments aren't pink anymore. I thought you were going to give a compliment. I asked Mr. Rinaldi, I was personally going to buy the paint if he would paint it.
So, Tom, can you see if Waste Pro could possibly switch the pickup on that house? And I have a couple of parents sent me photos 2 or 3 days in a row, which I'll be happy to share with you. That's number 2. Number 3 is just a source of irritation for me. Because if it's one thing, I know Annie Lockhart came one night to Calno and said one thing she hated was wasting her time, and I hate wasting my time too. And I feel like my time got really wasted, and I want to see where we are with something. 4.5 years ago, because I remember, because it was when you were running for office, the Seminole County Public Schools Joint Facilities Planning Committee was formed, and we met for hours over here in this next room, and then we met again, and they came up with a rough draft of the JPA, but Winter Springs had trouble with it, or somebody had problems with it, and Commissioner Horan got involved, and we kept meeting, and we kept meeting, and we kept meeting, and we kept meeting, and then all of a sudden, we stopped meeting, and we never heard anything about it again. And so at Calno, a couple of years ago, when Winter Springs was still part of Calno, I said, has anybody ever heard anything about the JPA? I sent it to Mr. Bauer, and he said, that Winter Springs said, oh yeah, I thought it was signed. Well, no, it's not signed. It was never signed. So do we not want it? Are we not going to have it? What the heck?
The PTAC met yesterday to kick off the final revisions. A couple things happened, and since I've come on board, I've been watching, and we've basically been trying to run 2 sets of books. One set of book under the present 2008 ILA, and then another set of books.
For those who do not know what the acronym stands for.
Oh, interlocal agreement, under the 2008 interlocal agreement, and another set of books that if we had enacted that 2015, what issues would be arising. What we found out was that we were far too restrictive on identifying the service areas for the schools. So when we were evaluating developments, a number of them were failing. And it was a high number that was failing. We were not giving any relief to use contiguous capacity, and there are other elements as well. And I presented to the PTAC yesterday about a half dozen items that just basically do not work. And if we had enacted that 2015, we would really be at odds with the development community, because we wouldn't be able to tell the state that we had approved the comprehensive plan amendments. We wouldn't be able to tell you that we had reviewed and issued SCALD stating that we had capacity. So what's transpired is we are distributing out. There was someone from Sanford that was at the meeting yesterday as well.
Jordan was there.
Jordan was there, exactly. And we're distributing the modifications. We went through my spreadsheet of the key issues that we need to readdress, and I'm going to update it based on the conversation that we had yesterday. And we're going to try to, over the next month or so, get a document that is ready to bring to the PSFPC to say, here are the key items that were kind of missed. We've gotten the subject matter experts together again. We've looked at how it would negatively impact the development community and negatively impact us by having us reject so many of these SCALDs and developments that are coming through, and make further recommendations. So we're hoping that this, coupled with one of the key issues, is now that we're going to have open enrollment next year, we want to make sure that we've got a document together that protects our in-county developers, making sure that protecting their capacity that they have reserved, and that capacity, in fact, is not being taken over by students from Orange, Volusia Lake that want to come into the district here. So, I mean, there's a couple moving things, and the thing that really got us moving was we want to make sure that we've got it prepared, we've got it ready for when we begin to address the open enrollment statewide as well.
This is coming?
No, it's next year. It's next
But
year.
the following. Okay, the following. Okay, so the PF, I never could remember that acronym. Will be meeting again.
They will. But first we're gonna get the PTAC together, which is everybody's planners who are the subject matter experts, and we're gonna develop a strong list of points on why we need to make changes to what was developed. We're not going all the way back to 08. We're going to work from the document that was developed in 15 and make either modifications or some additions that the PTAC group will recommend to the PSFPC.
And just FYI, it's been so long that the Lake Mary City Commissioner that was appointed to that board has died, so we'll need to get to Lake Mary to get another. I mean, it just got really.
Well, we had, I mean, it was great. It was the first PTAC meeting that had been called since 2014, and we had 100% attendance. So every municipality was there, as well as 2 people from the county when we went through the issues associated with that.
We're going in the right direction, as you're not listening to wait for that from.
Yeah, it's so much, and it's.
We had the same frustration.
It's the same thing the mayor's frustrated about, and then we're all frustrated about it. I talked to Mr. Beauregard about this. Things take so long, and it's just, like I said, it's just.
Yep.
Well,
Mrs. Locker.
I think Mrs. Mahaney brings up a good point in that we should probably remind everybody who their representatives are to the Public Schools Facility Planning Committee. Because I'm not sure who our representative is. Is it still?
Yes.
Wow, good luck. Oh,
That's appointed on an annual basis.
Guess who ours is?
Patty.
Art Woodruff.
Well, Patty or Commissioner Mahaney, a lot of personnel changed in our district.
Oh, I know,
and
Mr.
in the county
President,
and all.
yeah.
So that people had to relearn what needed to be done.
Oh,
Yeah, I know. I'm as frustrated as you, probably more so.
It's just, when we made it, the mayor made the board appointments, I almost said, we don't have that anymore. And I thought, well, maybe we do, but it's just been a year and a half.
You were complaining that you wanted another meeting?
No, but I spent all that time to get, and they get early, and I don't like to get up early, and all that time.
Actually, this year, I just took you off the mosquito board, and that hasn't been in 40 years.
Is there anything else to come from the city of Sanford?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Seeing
Very
none,
much.
Just for point of clarification.
Yes.
On the Milledgeville side, what I heard is that Joe and Tom will get together, and when they come up with something, we'll arrange a joint meeting, so then we can present it to once, and then we'll go from there.
Correct. And what I'd like to also just conclude with in our last 2 minutes, being totally transparent, because we're all on the same team, we have a lot of great things going on in our Sanford schools, and I just wanted Dr. Griffin to give you a 2-minute update of what maybe has been or will be different next year, so when you have residents coming to you and they're saying something, you can say, oh, no, it's not going to be that way next year. We're going to have a lot of construction. We've got multi-millions of dollars invested in both the Pinecrest facility and the Hamilton facility, so you're going to be seeing trucks coming through the streets of Sanford with construction. I know you lived it through Goldsboro. We're really happy with what's happened with that, so I'll turn it over to Dr. Griffin if I could.
I'll start with Goldsboro. We'll be opening a new building for this school year. You've seen it right out front, beautiful 2-story complex. Immediately filled every seat. There's a request from Magnet. We actually put portables there on a tentative program, and we set a waiting list. So very, very popular program. Hamilton, of course, is our School of Engineering. We have students in the Magnet there, and a few students on that waiting list. They're getting ready to go on under design and construction. It's going to be a major rebuild for Hamilton. Very excited about that. It's going to fit the theme of the school. Pinecrest, just so you are aware, we have a principal change at Pinecrest. Maria Cash is going to Bear Lake and bringing in Alex Augusta, a great guy that you're going to love him. And he's very innovative, and he's going to help kick off the School of Innovation at Pinecrest. I wanted to have the principal who would be there for the magnet program, for the program emphasis, so that he can help design the facility that will house the program.
Where's he coming from?
Barely.
He's coming
Right,
from.
I switched
Oh,
to,
you did.
just switched to Millennium, as you heard, will be moving to a brand new facility, and designed for that, next to Midway Elementary School, as Dr. Calvin said, a lot of shared facility, great opportunities there. We're continuing dual language or world languages in every single elementary school. You know, all our kindergartners had coding this year. We're now adding a few more grade levels next year, so that all the students have some computer programming opportunities. It has become a very, very popular thing to do. Crooms, you may not know, we graduated our first set of students. We had 14 students who earned an AA, so they came out of Crooms. The first 2 years of college under their belt. I think we have 40 now coming up next year, which is very, very exciting for us. Seminole High School is busting at the seams. You know, there was a time, I remember, as an assistant principal here at Seminole High School, nobody wanted to go. The enrollment was dropping every year. I think we created the Monster, which I think is a good thing. It's so popular. So the ninth grade center should be a big, big help to pull some of that population. We don't have quite enough students yet, or certainly the funds or the property to build a high school. But I will tell you, the new Millennium next to Midway Elementary is being built on a high school footprint. So that in 10, 15 years down the road, if we need a high school, we have to add one large building to that campus.
Add a storage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. But, and
Take it in somewhere.
I can go on and on, but I can tell you, I'm committed to having our best leaders and our best teachers at the Santa Fe area schools. We have more struggles at our Santa Fe area schools. I know you're doing everything you can to help us build up a middle class to help. But regardless of all that, these are popular programs with people from other parts of the county who want to come to these schools. So, did Joe, anything right about construction? Very quickly.
No, what we're anticipating for the Millennium Project is we'll probably be out getting our GMP this fall, so you'll hopefully see dirt moving by the end of the year. Goldsboro came on schedule, under budget, so everything really worked out well there. In addition, we are doing STEM labs at every single classroom. Typical STEM lab has 3 interactive 72-inch TVs, collaborative learning furniture. By the end of next year, we'll have those at every single elementary school. We're doing half the elementary schools this summer, half the elementary schools next summer.
The last piece I did bring up, when I first became superintendent, one piece of data that I looked at is to see where our gifted students reside. And I can tell you that our lower income schools had fewer gifted students, and it's only because they had fewer advocates. And in our Sanford area schools, in Region 3, Hamilton, Pinecrest, Midway, we've had a 1,600% increase in students identified for gifted education. So the board and I are advocating for those students where we are screening every second grader to identify who's gifted. So we have gifted populations at schools where we had, at one time had 1 or 2 gifted students in the entire school.
And we're the only school district in the country that actually received a multi-million-dollar grant from Javits Center for giftedness identification for minorities and such. So we're really thrilled with that because we feel in our heart of hearts that perhaps some of our discipline problems that we're having is because the kids are bored. They're not challenged enough. So we go student by student, even at the high school level. Dr. Burke meets with the principals of, you know, every child that is doing well, but they're not in AP classes or in honors classes. We're moving them into that direction so they can be more concentrated.
They were triple reminded me, at mayors and managers I brought and distributed something called Connect to Compete C2C, and that's for any family whose child is on free or reduced lunch in our system. The family is eligible for $9.50 per month internet access. So we're trying to close that digital divide, and you all know your internet bills and your cable bills. So this is a real program. It's out there. Dr. Williams actually distributed that to churches for me. But we just need to get that word out there and send it. If you don't have any more flyers, send them to us because the kids need the internet access at home. Otherwise, they're working at a disadvantage compared to the students who go home every day now.
Board members, anything else?
I just want to make a comment, a piece of history for those of you who were around. I wasn't on the board then, none of us were, but when the consent decree was passed, finally went through the court system in the 90s, it specifically said that Seminole High School could have no less than 1,500 students, and we are twice that. So we certainly have met the requirements. I should say.
That's amazing. The open enrollment, do,
Yeah, it's a challenge.
and do you think that's something that's gonna change over this next year, or do you think it's gonna remain?
We're getting calls.
It's really a nightmare for all of us in the state that we're working on. I can just summarize it this way: our schools are just about at capacity. We don't have a lot of capacity. Our absolute priority is to give our families the choices that they deserve. And if there are a few empty seats, mathematically, those would be the only seats that are available. We're working with, it was 13, now I think there are 18 other districts that have involved.
The last group was 17 of us got together to talk about different manners of.
And that's, we have the same protocol and procedures as Orange County and Volusia County. We have been receiving calls from Volusia to go to Seminole, from Orange County to go to Lake Bramley, and from University High School to go to Hackney. So the families
In
are
Lake
interested
County.
in
In Lake County, I got a call from somebody in Lake County.
We're on it.
Anything else, board members? Seeing no further business come before the board, I thank you all for your time and
Thank you.
discussion. Have a great afternoon.